Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ramadan Kareem, Ramazan Mubarak. Welcome everyone to the first class of this 5-class mini course in Ramadan Circle 2023. I've thought about doing this in years past, but for one reason or another, it didn't come to pass, but here we are. Now we're going to start, inshallah, and from now on in the coming years, we'll continue doing this, and for other, seasons and holidays as well, inshallah, we'll think of reasons to gather. So welcome one, welcome all. The point of this class, I kept it a bit vague in the description, but the point of this class is to, inshallah, get some wisdoms and benefits from the great Persian tradition as well as the greater Islamic tradition as pertains to Ramadan, so we can get the most out of this month, so that, as we'll see in future classes, we don't become like one of those people who the only thing they get from it is hunger and thirst and headaches. All right, Bismillah. So just one thing I wanted to throw in is that as a bonus until Eid, so 29 days you guys have approximately to get a membership to the website for half off. So usually all of these tiers would be twice as much as they are now. So $40, $30, and $20, but now they're only $20, $14, and $9.99. And for those of you who've been following the course, you'll know, or the website, you should know that we'll have many courses so far, and that we'll continue to have courses like this one and others, covering the whole Persian tradition. And actually we'll be seeing snippets of some of the courses content in these Ramadan sections. And you can get access to all of the recorded classes. It's hundreds of hours of material, along with books and the community section that you guys see, and many other things, videos of the lectures that I give that aren't published online, and a lot more content that you guys can kind of browse what's available on the website. You're already all members, so that is already done. All right, so I'd like to start with a bit of Quran. My recitation skills are not up to par, so unfortunately, I'll just read you guys the English translation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was revealed as a guide for humanity with clear proofs of guidance and the standard to distinguish between right and wrong. So whoever is present this month, let him fast. Of course, in Islam, the niyyah and proof for everything is really important, right? So for whatever action we do, we need to have a proof for it. And for every action, we need to make an intent. And even, of course, there's a ruling that if you don't even intend to fast, right, it doesn't count as a fast. You have to, of course, scholars will say waking up for Fajr and eating food, of course, that counts as the intent. But it's not just that if one day, for example, you just happen to not eat or drink, that doesn't count as a fast, right? You have to be doing everything with a present mind. As Rumi says, Bishtu'in akhbar azan sadru sudur la salata tamma illa bil hudur. Hear this hadith from the front and center of mankind, the Prophet Muhammad, that there is no prayer complete without a present mind. And likewise, we need to be fully present in Ramadan, and hopefully the goal of this course is to make us fully present. All right. Can anyone tell me the wrong answer for what the purpose of fasting is? I know this is kind of phrased weirdly, you could say, the wrong answer. And the reason I want someone to bring this up is because this is the answer I was given as a child. Does anyone know what the most common wrong answer, again, it's important, wrong answer is? Yes, perfect. Oh my God. I'm glad that you get some people on the same page. Yes. All right. So 2 people have commented, feeling of the poor or to think of the poor. So I grew up in a semi-secular Persian household. So we were Muslim, of course. My birth name is Muhammad Ali. Both of my parents are Muslim, but we weren't very practicing, right? To the extent that maybe the average Iranian person is practicing. So we knew we were Muslim, and we would fast here and there, and we would go to the Islamic Center. But my parents were by no means very religious people. And of course, growing up in America added to that. But I had my grandparents around, and they were religious. And like most religious people, bless their hearts, we're not thinking so deeply about why we do things, especially if you're not from a diaspora scenario. People like us, maybe we think very deeply about why we do every single thing, because people ask us, oh, why do you cover? Why do you do this? Why do you have a beard, etc.? So maybe we actually are investigating. But people who grow up in Muslim societies, especially societies where the vast majority of people are Muslim and Islam is a default, they kind of take everything they do more or less for granted. And they don't really even often know, with all due respect, them why we even do the things we do. So I remember as a child when I was told that I should fast, and I asked why, they said, so that you know what the poor feel. And of course, the poor, they can drink water and still eat food during the day, and they don't end the day with an elaborate meal, right? They eat meager food. So of course, that's not the reason that we fast. And I think that maybe that's something simple and also a bit worldly, right? It emphasizes more of the feeling of the hunger, which I think is the least important thing, frankly, if you look at it. All right. So if you look in the Quran and the Hadith tradition, it's told to us what the purpose is. It says, oh, believers, fasting is prescribed for you as it was for those before you, meaning the Jews and the Christians, etc. So perhaps you will become mindful of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the idea is to increase our spiritual mindfulness. And of course, there are many other benefits that we will see as we will read in the class from Sa'di and Maulana and etc., Rumi will tell us the benefits of fasting. And it's much deeper than understanding what the poor feel. And there's many hadiths, and every class I'll try to pull out some. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says fasting is a shield, right? So it shields you from sinning. Why? Because when you become a person who cannot eat or drink for a whole day, some of us living in countries in Europe, sometimes we fast for 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 hours. I have friends in Nordic countries who in the summer, just a few years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, they were fasting for 22 hours. Right? When you become a person who can resist eating and drinking, which is you so dearly want to, then of course you can resist many other things in life. So we will in the future, of course, have more and more hadiths. So I thought we could read every class. We'll get a snippet of what some of the greats thought about fasting or had to say, or the lessons. So we'll read a bit from Bustan as-Sa'di. And this was 2 classes ago. We covered the Bustan. And he has this beautiful section called On the Point of Fasting. All right, and this is a beautiful calligraphy rendition of the section. All right, this is even nicer than the last one. And these are the very last lines of the section, which have essentially the moral. All right, so I'll read the Persian text, although usually in the classes I have students read the Persian, but since I don't want to put anyone on the spot, I'll read the Persian. And then I'd like to have some of you guys help me read the English. So if anyone wants to volunteer, when I flip to the English slide, you can just raise your hand and then I'll call on you. So normal classes with tuition and signups and all that, I call on people. I force them to read like a very unkind, mean professor, but no one will be forced to read here today. So you guys can just volunteer. Whoever is interested, you can just raise your hand when we get to the English slide. So if you'd like, you can even preemptively raise your hand. All right. به سرهنگ سلطان چنین گفت زن که خیز مبارک در رزق زن برو تازه خانت نصیبی دهند که فرزندکانت نظر بر رهند بگفتا بود مطبخ امروز سرد که سلطان به شب نیت روزه کرد زن از ناامیدی سر انداخت پیش همی گفت با خود دل از فاقریش که سلطان از این روزگویی چه خواست که افطار او عید طفلان ماست خورنده که خیرش برآید ز دست به از صائم الدهر دنیا پرست مسلم کسی را بود روزه داشت که درمانده ای را دهد نان چاشت وگرنه چه لازم که سعی بری ز خود بازگیری و هم خود خوری. Beautiful. All right. So I'm saying first, not to my own recitation, beautiful. I'm saying it to Sa'di's verse. Does anyone want to read the first slide of the translation? And if you could read it slowly so that we can pretty much, grasp it better. No volunteers. I can call on one of the students from other classes. Urmi, would you like to read? I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The wife of a government officer said, "Rise, Mubarak, and knock at the door of life's bread. Go and ask them to give you a share from the tray, for your children are in a deplorable way." He answered, "The kitchen today will be cold, for the Sultan last night said a fast he would hold." The wife in despair dropped her head on her breast. With heart sore from hunger, herself she addressed. When the king talks of fasts, does he gain in the least? The breaking of his fast is my children's feast.
So the idea is that the king and his court are responsible for feeding his government officers, his viziers, his sarhangs, etc. And the king has decided that he will fast. And for that reason, he doesn't want the kitchen to run. Why? Because he's selfish and he thinks, well, if I'm not eating, why should they cook anything? The point of the cooking is for me, right? So it doesn't matter that my viziers and my generals and my servants, maybe they don't want to fast. Maybe there's pregnant women. Maybe their wives are not able to fast, right? Maybe their children aren't able to fast, period, and they rely on our food. The Sultan does not care, right? He's only interested in the fact that he's not eating, so why spend any money on feeding anyone? All right. And then the wife is, of course, upset, and she says, what is the point of this fast? What does he gain when from his fast he also deprives us? In this line here, it says it's not so clear. The breaking of his fast is my children's feast. This refers to a particular Persian cultural practice with breaking fast. Anyone here Persian or Iranian? Can you tell us how Iranians or Persians break their fast? It's kind of different than in other cultures. Oh, don't tell me I'm the only Iranian here. Okay. Iranians, we break our fast by eating a little bit of bread and cheese. So in some cultures I've seen, it's common for them to just eat the date and drink a little water, and then all of a sudden they're eating dinner, right? For us Iranians, it's different. We eat a bit of bread and cheese and we let it settle, and then we go to eat the food so that we can, it's not that we're better or anything, it's so we can make more room in our stomach. Because if you start eating quickly, you'll get full more quickly. So when she says, the wife, the breaking of his fast is my children's feast, it means the very least of what the sultan eats, just some bread and cheese, for our poor children would be like a feast, right? So this sultan, what he's withholding from our children, even this little bread and cheese, they would be delighted to have that. Anyone like to read the second slide? All right, go ahead, Mariam.
The eaters who have a beneficent hand beat the constantly fasting and world-serving band. It is right for the person to keep up a fast, who gives bread to the poor for their morning repast. If not, why should trouble be suffered by you? You withhold from yourself and consume yourself too. The ignorant fancies of hermits must tend to confound unbelief and faith in the end. There is clearness in water and mirrors as well, but the clearness of each you should know how to tell.
All right. So each one of these lines, it seems, requires a breakdown. So he says the eaters who have a beneficent hand beat the constantly fasting and world-serving band. So it means a person who doesn't necessarily fast, but he's beneficent, he helps the poor, right? That person is better than someone who's Saim Dahr, who's just constantly fasting, but he's doing it for the sake of serving the world, whether it be to impress people or one reason or another. And then he says the person who fasts, it's right if he fasts, if he gives away what he has extra. Now, of course, he's not talking about like the poor or something like that, someone who can afford to. Why? The idea is when we fast, right, we have suhoor, that's basically a breakfast. Really, the only thing we're missing is lunch, right? Because our iftar is essentially at dinner time most of the year, right? So all we're missing is lunch. What's the purpose of fasting if you just attach that lunch to the dinner and you just eat a ton of food and you get bloated and disgusting, right? So a lot of times non-Muslims assume that Ramadan is kind of a benefit for us in a worldly sense because it's a religion enforced diet. They think, oh, how great, you'll lose weight. And sometimes when it's in right before the summer, like, no, great, you'll lose weight right before the summer. But really, we gain weight. We Muslims would laugh at that. And you would look at the statistics in Ramadan, the food consumption is at its highest in the Muslim world. That's when the highest restaurant, I mean, anyone who knows any restaurateur or has worked in a Muslim restaurant knows you have no month like the month of Ramadan, right? So this is, of course, completely missing the point. The point is that you shouldn't overeat or just put a pause and then eat as much as you would when you can. The point is so that you give away what you wouldn't eat, what you miss, to the poor so that they can have a benefit, right? He says, if not, why should trouble be suffered by you? You withhold from yourself and you consume too. So you just put it aside, and then when the time comes, you eat it all again anyway. So what's the point? Just cut yourself the slack and just eat what you were going to eat anyway, right? If you were just going to hoard it aside. And then when he says the ignorant fancies of hermits, what he's talking about as a hermit is someone who kind of resigns from the world. This Zahid is a character that is commonly shown as an example of the wrong kind of piety in Persian poetry. So a hermit is someone who goes off like a hermit crab, right? They go off and they don't engage with the world. That's kind of a negative way of being a Muslim, right? Muslims are always supposed to engage with the world. Our spirituality is not one of just going off into a mountain or something. Right. So this is a hermit's behavior, to just sit there and hoard your food and then eat it when the time comes. All right. So this section is from the Golistan. It's from chapter, I believe, on beneficence, but you guys can get access to the whole course again for only $10 a month at this time of year. And it has plenty of lessons like this as well. So I was wondering if you guys, so I had a slide because I thought maybe more people would come, but it seems like the time zone is very unfavorable for basically everyone except Americans, unfortunately. I had a slide saying, what do you guys think about the moral of the story? And in hindsight, I shouldn't have deleted it because I thought maybe too many people would come and I would feel bad to skip over. But since there's a more intimate setting, do you guys want to add anything or ask any questions or say anything? It's definitely open. I know most of you actually have never been in a Persian poetics class. So it's definitely not like I just talk and you guys have to listen. So if anyone has any thoughts or ideas or anything wasn't clear, you can definitely also throw it out there. And we have a very similar idea from the Golistan Sa'adi. So this is just his Golistan, kind of a companion book to that one. It's a very simple idea. He says, جوانمرد که بخورد و بدهد به از آبدی که روزه دارد و بنهد. A chivalrous man who eats and gives food away is better than a worshiper who hoards his food all day. All right. No comments, questions, thoughts, anything? You can always ask later as well. All right. And this is from the Golistan class, which is also part of the package that's 50% off. You can see all these chapters. All right. So now here's a discussion slide. I didn't delete it. Okay. So the lesson is pretty clear. Maybe this was too broad, but I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts. Ooh, someone said question on the term Javonmad. Javonmad is kind of where the word futuwa is probably coming from futuwa in Arabic, because fatah means young man, and futuwa means the behaviors of chivalrous young men or something to that effect. That's what he means by that. But basically, you could just broaden it to say a good person. Like, it doesn't have to have a gender necessarily. We all fast. All right, no questions, comments. Yeah, it is related to futua. Great observation. All right, beautiful. So I think the lesson is kind of, I might have given it away if it wasn't so simple. Okay, now I wanted to give you guys another anecdote that I happened to come across on Twitter and I absolutely loved. And it belongs to Your Turkish Fave on Twitter. And it was about her professor of religious studies, who was a Muslim who happened to be studying in the Vatican as some sort of program. And it was during Ramadan, so he's fasting. So she writes, my professor once fasted for, excuse me, I should say fasted. I might have messed that up myself. Fasted for Ramadan in the Vatican during his studies. When it was time to break his fast, he expected a feast, right? So maybe he's at some sort of dorm or something like that. But all they offered was a piece of bread and soup. A priest saw his disappointment and said, so he's fasting there in the Vatican, and he's expecting, like us Muslims, right? Oh, they'll give me a huge feast, right? Probably there's a dining hall. They'll keep a bunch of food waiting for me so that I can, pig out when I'm ready to break my fast. And then the priest is disappointment, or sees him disappointed and says, we thought the point of fasting is to consume less and be mindful. Is it not? He was embarrassed in a way he had never been. Those Catholic priests had understood Ramadan better than him. So I think this is some really important food for, like, don't want to make you guys more hungry, but food for thought for those of us who are fasting to kind of, again, not miss the point of this fast. It's always embarrassing, right? When a member of a different religion, and one especially when we think we have a slightly better religion, right? It's embarrassing when a leader of that religion knows our religion better than us. All right. And again, just to remind you guys, don't want to repeat it too many times. I think I probably overestimated this. It's 50% off. All right. So now I have some discussion questions. I think part of the point of this is usually, for those of you who know, when you join a Persian Product class, I bring enough material to where I can just lecture at you guys for 1 hour and a half straight. I'm famous for speaking very quickly and never stopping. But I wanted this to be more of kind of a conversation and again, more of a circle, right? Like the name entails. And also, I'm very thirsty, and it's before Maghrib, frankly, so I don't want to talk for an hour and a half. So I wanted to know if you guys could answer these questions. I'll also post them in the chat the discussion page community for the people who missed the live video, and they'll be able to add in as well. I wanted to know if any of you guys could answer any of these, and maybe inshallah it could kind of be a fruitful discussion. The first one I'm actually hoping to benefit from. Of course, the last two is kind of personal, and maybe we can keep each other accountable. But the first one I really want to know, right? So sometimes people will say, oh, there's a great way to feel hydrated. Actually, one of my students yesterday said there are slow release caffeine tablets for those of you who are addicted to caffeine, slow release caffeine tablets. So it could be in that vein. It could be something as basic as what to eat that's good for you, or it could be something more spiritually oriented. But I'm definitely open to hearing from you guys. The floor is open. Would you like to, instead of typing, speak aloud so that we could all hear? If you'd like, I mean, of course, I could always read. He says, I came to number 3, talking to Ramadan with non-Muslims actually helps me be more accountable from the perspective of adab. Why? Because you feel that if you're talking about Ramadan to non-Muslims, that you should actually like live it out and be accountable to what you're preaching to them?
That's actually exactly it. This instance happened to me yesterday, the first day of fasting, when I was complaining about something that a coworker had done. And my colleague had respectfully, jokingly, basically said that, it seems that you're a lot less patient about this behavior than I am. Maybe I'm the person who's actually fasting.
Oh, wow.
And I realized it was meant purely as a joke, but I actually thank this particular colleague later on, saying that you reminded me of a behavior that I shouldn't be doing, and thank you. And I felt the need to express my gratitude to her for making sure that she reminded me of my obligation, even though it's completely meant as a joke.
No, that's great, actually. That's amazing. Again, a lot of times it can be in Muslim societies and non-practicing Muslim, or in, Western societies and non-Muslim, who reminds you of what the whole point is, right? So me, even if I was raised in Iran my whole life and never left, maybe I would think about fasting like my grandparents. Oh, probably it's so that we know what poor people feel, right? But it was living in America that made me look for a deeper reason, right? That wasn't compelling enough when I was a kid. Oh, well, I'm never going to know how poor people feel like anyway, so what's the point? I don't want to do it. All right. If you'd like to add a comment, please just raise your hand and we can get to you guys, inshallah. No one has anything to add. Come on, you guys. We want to hear what you have to say. What is a practice that you do that others can benefit from? There must be some suhoor hack or some dinner thing. Okay, Nilu Farjan, go ahead.
So I really interesting tip with me.
Oh, you're breaking up.
So
I'm
we
so
can
sorry.
do
You're breaking up. I can't hear you.
that.
I want to save you the trouble of repeating it all. I'm so sorry. Maybe if you can move somewhere where the Wi-Fi is a bit better. Someone said, for number 3, reading the works of any great saint makes you feel shame, to be honest. That's very true. You read the likes of Sahl al-Tustari and you'd survive on a bread crust for months and make you look like you look at your massive iftar. This is very true. So we'll be looking at these as the class progresses. We'll go to the stories of the saints. Beautiful. Shireen, you raised your hand. Go ahead.
This is a sahur hack, but lentils are really beneficial to eat at sahur because they're very fibrous and protein heavy. And those are the 2 things that it takes your digestive system the longest to digest. So I find when I eat it, I can feel pretty normal until early in the afternoon rather than feeling hunger, before lunchtime.
All right, so that was lentils for anyone who might have missed it due to connection. I didn't know that. That's great. Thank you. Nilufar, were you able to fix the internet? Hopefully, or maybe you switched the headphones or something. I see your hand is still up. Okay, maybe we'll get back to you. Let's see. Juhi Maula. Did you go ahead?
Yeah, this isn't so much a hack, but I don't know about others, but like I find it difficult to have a consistent like prayer and dua practice. So I've used a bunch of like gratitude journals over the years, and I've basically found a method that I like. So I find it to say my prayers out loud, but writing them down really helps me because it forces me to slow down my brain, think about what I want to say, and pray for myself and pray for my others.
I didn't know that. Is a gratitude journal something that it's like a genre, you can Google it and find it, or is it just like a concept you have to make it yourself?
It is a genre. Like you can definitely like find free templates or like pay for gratitude journals that are like pre-made on Amazon, but I've kind of compiled a bunch from like the Christians have a tradition of prayer journaling from Bible study. So I've like kind of picked up a few things from there, a few things from secular gratitude journaling, and kind of made up my own that I actually am consistent with.
That's good if it works for you. I mean, Hafiz says, Gar murshid ma pir mogan shod che tafavut dar hich sari nis ke serri ze khoda nis. He says, if the elder of the priest or the Magian priest, the Zoroastrian priest becomes my guide, what's the error? Because in every head, there's a secret from God, at least maybe one. So this is a great thing if we can pick it up from the Christians. Thank you very much. Urmia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry if there's any background noise. I'm at university right now. For me, my goal for this Ramadan, I moved to Canada as a kid, and I was an atheist for a very long time. And I feel like I always use, for the past 3 years since I came back to Islam, I've been using it as a time to try and reconnect with a lot of my culture that I've lost, and a lot of the self-hate that I used to have as a child, and try to heal that trauma. Because even though a lot of I'm not passing any judgment. A lot of Iranians are going in the direction of atheism because
Sadly,
because of, you know, what is happening back home. I feel like Islam is a great part of our culture. It's an undisputable part of our culture, and Ramadan always helps me reflect
yeah,
and connect with that lost aspect of my what
agreed.
I've
Yeah.
lost the past 10 years. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. No worries. You know what you've brought up, it's maybe for those non-Iranians here, it might be a bit complicated or hard to unpack, but basically because of what's happened in Iran, so many Iranians have religious trauma and they have a very difficult relationship with Islam. And especially those of us, like, so your parents brought you here, my parents, you know, they birthed me here. A lot of their parents, although not so much my parents, their context was different, but most Iranians who come abroad, they have the sense of, okay, that's enough Islam. You know, we've dealt with enough drama with Islam. So it's unfortunate that we have this trauma to unpack. But I think that, and I went through the same basically struggle that you did, that you discussed, of course, not the same, but the same idea. And I think it's really beautiful if you can kind of, you know, put what's happening in Iran on pause and say, okay, now I'm living in America, now I'm living in Canada, you know, I'm doing Ramadan with my Muslim friends. And to just think, you know, when you wake up for suhoor, wow, you know, regardless of the drama that's surrounding Islam in Iran, Afghanistan, whatever, for 1,000 years, 1,500 years, whatever, my ancestors have been getting up at 4 a.m. to eat food, right? So it's really beautiful. It feels like, I hate to borrow kind of a secular Western language, but it's like you're communicating with your ancestors almost. Like, we've been doing this for so long. You know, how could I just abandon it? And if, you know, if it was good enough for my ancestors, it's good enough for me. And I even remember when I was young and I didn't want to do Ramadan, my dad, when I would try to talk to him or say, you know, I can do this, I can do that, he would say, you can't even wake up and fast. You know, I used to fast when I was 12 years old. You're still not that disciplined. All right, so someone said, oh, Nilufar, so I hope you can fix your connection. Maybe next time we'll hear from you. Says, make a list of 30 du'as and focus on one each night. This has been a game changer for me this year. Apparently, this is what the people of Yemen practice. Very beautiful. So make a list and focus on one du'a each night. I'm a uni student and the fast is quite long in London. Yeah, may God bless you guys in Northern Europe. I mean, in summer, was it like 20 hours or something? Therefore, eating grapes, watermelon, melon, and dates helps me so much with increasing water consumption at Sahari. And I find it hard to drink water, just water. Yeah, if anything, I've heard, and someone who has experience, please correct me if I'm wrong, chugging water at Sahari is apparently it's bad for you, actually. So it's like superficially it's good for you, but then it causes you to just, excuse me, expel it all, and then you feel really thirsty later. Like, there's better ways to retain your water. It's like that in Pakistan too. Some people blame Islamization for the economic situation here. Other people just think it's too much and too hard in the Western cultivated nafs. I'm a Pakistani Canadian who lives in a predominantly Iranian area in Toronto. Yeah, so I was just there recently. And it saddens me the beautiful parts of Islamo-Persian radiation, I think tradition, yeah, tends to be ignored due to political circumstances. Yeah, it's a tragedy. Truly, it's tragedy. It really represents the most beautiful part of our collective tradition as Muslims. Thank you so much. I mean, I really agree. That's why I've, you know, dedicated my life to it. But it's just the recent events in Iran have been so devastating for the culture. No worries. Yeah, we all have fasting bread. Okay. I'm trying to call on people who haven't spoken so far. Mariam, you read, so I don't know if your hand is still up from there. If you want to add something, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been part of this study group of sorts where we've been reading Maulana Rumi's Masnavi with the teacher who's based in Turkey. And so coming into Ramzan, it's been a bit unsettling because, you know, a few things, reflections and conversations made me realize, one, my idea of God is somebody who gets me through life. So I make dua when I need help, when I need, you know, when I fear I need protection from something.
Mhm.
And the other was, I've had this since past many years. I could never quite understand. I've been seeking out teachers, spiritual teachers, and I've joined groups, or whatever you may call them. But I've never really been able to stay with them. And they've often they've had rituals, zikr circles, and other things that I've tried to be a part of, and it would sometimes actually make me sick. It would make me unwell, physically unwell.
Oh, wow.
And so I could never really continue. So coming into Ramzan, two things, and it's been very unsettling. It gives me anxiety, physically makes me feel anxious. One, I need to reestablish my connection with God, with this, with the idea of God that I've held for so long, challenged so strongly. And the other, to not hide behind, because I realized that's what I was doing, not hide behind rituals.
Wow.
And so this calls for a lot of self-reflection, which is very difficult. But I'm trying not to run away from it.
Wow. I'm
Hopefully
sorry to hear that.
Ramzan will help me do that.
Inshallah.
No,
Yeah, I
no,
would.
it's okay. Hopefully it's a good thing.
I hope so. I would add as a word of caution to everyone here. I always say this in classes where we're reading Sufi texts. Be careful of Sufi groups when you join them. A lot of them have cultish tendencies and they'll want money from you. There's a lot of spiritual abuse. They'll bother you. I'm not saying that all or even most do this, but just be very cautious. And I've heard this before, actually. I've had another student that I was teaching Rumi's ghazals to. He was Turkish, actually, in Turkey. And one day he just stopped after maybe a dozen classes. So we met for 3 months. And he just said, I feel sick. And then he never took a class again. And so this is something I'm interested in. I mean, I can't relate, fortunately, I've never experienced it, but I wonder maybe if there's some spiritual meaning there, that maybe if someone who's, a fake has introduced this to you, that there's something deep inside you, the same way that when you eat food that's rotten, you feel sick, even before you're sick, it makes you feel sick because it's your body rejecting it. Maybe that's your soul rejecting this, whatever has been. And not to say that the person you've studied with, whether the Masnavi or otherwise is like that. This is just a general idea, but I mean, now I'm hearing it second, third time. It kind of, at first I thought, okay, maybe there's something to this, but wow.
Ali, just to add to this quickly. So this Masnavi group is something that's actually resonated with me. I have to wake up relatively early for it. And it surprises me how I've managed to commit, because I couldn't commit with other groups. I think with the other groups, I could perhaps, there are a lot of other things that I could talk about, but one thing is I've seen it work for other people. And I think sometimes it's so much about being true to yourself. It's really exactly what I feel, a recurring message that I feel keeps coming back. I thought something was wrong with me. And the truth is sometimes some teachers would say that. They'd say, you need to develop a connection with the teacher. And I'd ask, how do I do that? How do you love your teacher? It's not something you can control. But I noticed other people were capable of doing it. So it's really about accepting that the different ways of approaching the truth, so to speak. And that requires, I guess, a lot of honesty with yourself, about yourself, which can again be tough. Like I said, I realized I was hiding behind a lot of rituals, a lot of groups, a lot of language or nomenclature ideas. So I need to stop doing that.
Sure. I would have two notes. One I would say is the relationship with the teacher shouldn't feel forced. There should be a natural gravity. You shouldn't feel like you have to do something, or there's problems, or you don't like to listen to what they have to say, or they don't get you. I feel like that's a big thing. And another thing is sometimes the rituals can be a benefit, and sometimes, like you said, they can hinder. So many of the greatest Sufis were Owaisi, right? Like Owais Gharani. He didn't say the Prophet, والسلام, but he had a connection with him, right? Many of them have connections with the previous saints, but they're not actually through any teacher. Like Shams Tabrizi was this way, right? So we don't necessarily need those people. Sometimes it's better maybe to fare on your own and read the Masnavi on your own, read the Quran on your own, and then maybe return to kind of a more guided process. Let's see. Shireen, you're raising your hand. Go ahead. Or is it raised from before?
Yeah, I also had another thing to add, which was, I don't know, keeping salat is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. And I found that Ramadan is a really good time to almost replace the nourishment that you get from food with salat and use it in the same way that we use our meals to like self-regulate and feel like we've regained some energy for the rest of the day. I don't know, that's just something that I've experienced in Ramadan, is that not only is it easier to keep the practice punctual and regular, but you almost come to realize that it's the same type of thing. It's food in just a different way.
I definitely agree. I find it much easier to keep up a prayer regimen when you're fasting. For one, even a very mundane worldly reason is that you're not full. When your stomach is full, it's literally uncomfortable to pray and get up and get down, and you feel lethargic. And then when you're hungry, you don't want to do it because you want to eat first, then drink water. And it's like Rumi has this beautiful line. He extols this virtue many times, but he says, "Ey mard samo shikam ro khali dar." Oh, man of the samo, person who wants to engage in this mystical audition, this listening to this spiritual music or poetry or etc., keep your stomach empty. So this is a very important lesson for us. All right. So some people have spoken. Don't be shy, everyone. We're all friends here. Of course, I know that there's some people who can still give us a benefit? What are some practices that you can use? Or if anyone has any personal goal, even if it's something mundane, maybe you would be surprised, someone who could, very much relate to it or like to talk to you. Or also maybe how will you hold yourself accountable? Also, this is something important to think about. Yeah, so the meeting starts. I'm sorry about the time zone complications, everyone. Every class, the first class, time zone is always difficult. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So some people were asking what time is that here or there. The easiest way to do it is to just say Eastern time to my country time. So you could say Eastern time to, I don't know, Delhi or Cairo or Istanbul time, and it will say 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours. And then you'll say, okay, 6 p.m. plus 6 hours is midnight my time. So I apologize to those of you who are farther east and it's very late. Rayan Ali, would you like to say something?
Yeah, assalamu. One thing that I really like about Ramadan is the community aspect. The everyone gets together, the family, friends, but also the fact that you are the company you keep. So one thing that I'd like to do is surround myself with things like books, lectures, courses, etc., just to keep myself mindful, to keep myself learning, keep the reminders flowing, the knowledge growing, and do my best to share and to disseminate with friends over a cup of coffee or tea or something. So yeah, definitely books, lectures, etc.
I agree completely. I think that, especially for those of us who live in Western countries, we have such a limited range of time to think about things that aren't related to our job and our mortgage and rent payments and things like that and traffic and whatnot. So if Ramadan gives us a 1 month opportunity to focus on this, not only can we personally benefit, but maybe we can kind of whisper something to the ears of our friends so that they can gain something, right? Instead of I hear in many Western countries, it's like this, and Dearborn is definitely like this as well in the Detroit area, that in Ramadan, the shisha lounges are as busy as they ever are, right? Maybe even if they are busy, at least maybe go tell your friends, hey, let's talk about something beneficial as opposed to just, I don't know, the sports game or whatever. All right. Anyone else? What are the goals that you guys have this Ramadan? My goal, I can tell you guys my goal. My goal is to be more productive, because in past years, what I would do is I would just be sleepy and lethargic half the day and I wouldn't get anything done. And then what would happen is all my work would pile up and I would stay up all night late. And then, once you're done with prayers and stuff, it's like 10 p.m. And then you start working till 2, 3 a.m. And then, oh, Fajr is at 4. So let me just work until 4. And then all of a sudden I stayed up all night and I sleep at 4 and I wake up at noon and the day is ruined and I'm not benefiting anything. So this has unfortunately happened to me. It doesn't start that way, but slowly as the month would progress, it would kind of turn into that. So one of my goals this time is to maintain a strict sleep schedule, is to never for the whole 30 days have an all-nighter. That's unfortunately in previous years towards the end, it would turn into that. Not that I was like intending to do that, but it just slowly you just kind of stay up so late that it's like, oh, it's Fajr soon, so might as well, whatever. So my goal this year is to actually get a night's sleep every night. So actually sleep at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and then wake up at 4 a.m., not to just stay up and work all through the night. All right. Another one of my goals is to build good habits, keep them. Yeah. One personal note I have is that I didn't used to pray all 5 prayers, right? But then when I was in Iran, the first Ramadan in Iran, I said, you know what? I have to pray all 5 prayers. And one thing that actually got me to do this was there's a phrase in Persian that goes, kebab bi piyaz, ruze bi namaz, which means a kebab with no onions, which for us Iranians, onions are very important in the kebab. And we don't cook them like Arabs and Mediterranean people. They're mostly raw and we bite them raw. Yeah, it sounds kind of disgusting for you not Iranians with the kebab. So kebab with no onions and prayer with no fasting. The idea of this phrase is to say that something is missing, that's missing an important component, right? So I heard that phrase and I thought, wow, yeah, it's true. I can't just do Ramadan and not pray. It's kind of like a bad luck, like I'm laying around anyway, too tired to do anything. I might as well actually finish the prayers. So in that Ramadan, I got in the habit, and then I kept all my prayers. And then when the next Ramadan came, I thought, wow, mashallah, it was so easy, but it was because I got in that habit in Ramadan. All right. Urmi, you've raised your hand. Go ahead.
Just wanted to mention, I mean, in terms of the goal, and someone mentioned already the community aspect. And that's something I really miss, actually. I grew up in South Asia, and I've been living here in the US for a long time, and also in other Western countries. And I live by myself, so I don't have my family around. And I grew up as a woman in South Asia, and people would know that we really don't go to the mosque. So for women, going to the mosque is not part of the thing. So I know, like, Muslims who grew up in Western countries, they're used to like being connected to a mosque, which given that I came here as an adult, I never really developed that habit. So I miss that community other times, but during Ramadan, I really feel it. So one of the things that I'm really trying to figure out is to be sort of part of a community.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's one thing. And I mean, as many people, I struggle with keeping a regular prayer schedule. That's so a lot of self-improving things, but I'm kind of grateful for this kind of a class. That's why I was
Oh,
like,
I'm
I was
so
happy
glad.
because it's really fantastic to hear other people thoughts and practices. It's so helpful. So
I'm
thank
so
you.
glad to hear that. My pleasure. That's great. And I'm glad that you were able to have a mosque experience in the West. Now, one thing I'll say about women not being allowed to go to mosque, this is really emphasized mostly in the Hanafi mazhab, which is, of course, common in Central
South
Asia and
Asia.
South Asia. And I think that this is actually inherited from the Persian cultural practices. Like pardeh and all these things originally came from Persian culture. And Abu Hanifa himself, right, he's Persian. So I think that this emphasis on women being very secluded, like, for example, we see in some regional countries that women are fully covered and they're not allowed to really go outside. And this was common in Turkey, by the way, before the Ottoman Empire collapsed. Turkish mosques, women go now and they go to the second floor in the back. That wasn't the case before. The secularists actually did that. They opened up the balcony to women. Before, women also didn't really go to mosques. And I think this is a very unfortunate, really, innovation, because if you look at the Prophet ﷺ's mosque, right, whose guidance we follow, his, women were in the mosque, and there was also no divider. And we know there was no divider because the Sahaba would recognize one another, and he would even say, like, don't talk and whatnot, don't mingle while like we're praying or doing something important, or men should not look back at women, etc., like that. So even there wasn't a divider, right? So think about how sensitive we are with gender things in the masjid, where the Prophet ﷺ himself was not sensitive, right? So sometimes when something is important, we're too lax with it. And other times when it's settled one way, we go too extreme with it. And I think this is definitely one of them. And this is especially maladaptive in Western countries. Because if you want everyone to remain Muslim and your kids to be Muslim, you want your wife and your mother, whatever, sister, to go to the mosque so she can learn Islam and then teach her kids, if she's going to be the one spending more time than the dad, suppose, like in our cultural understanding with the kids, then she needs to be able to pass Islam down. So how could she pass Islam if she doesn't go to a mosque? And even the mosques that let women in, a lot of times there's like a dumpster door. So there's the front door of the mosque where the women go, and then the door, or where the men go, excuse me, and the door where the women go, it's like in an alley, like next to a dumpster and like broken needles, in inner city mosques, a lot of times it's like that. And then the room is really dirty and small and just poor facilities all around. So, and one example I heard actually of a white woman convert who walked into the front door and they welcomed her when she walked in, and she converted to Islam. She was already wanting to convert, but she wanted to finalize it. And then when she went back to walk to the front door, they said, no, you can't come in here. And they showed her to the garbage door. And then she never went back to that mosque, of course. So anyway, that's a very unfortunate thing. I'm sorry to hear that. So let me read a few comments that were written down. Someone said, 2 of my goals this Ramadan are to refrain from complaining. It's a very big thing that we Persians also have. We're big complainers. And worrying about the future. Now I'm guilty of this one big time. Tawakkalna ala Allah. We have given tawakkul. We trust basically our future to God. One funny thing I hope to stick to is working out while fasting. Now, this is something that I've seen that I'm very impressed with. I'm averse to working out. I'm not good at working out. It's not in me. But the idea of working out, especially some people go right before Maghrib time. So they go like the 1 hour before Maghrib. Kudos to you people. You really are embodying something I wish I could do. Health-focused goals, i.e. that will translate into long-term lifestyle changes, right? Trying to eat better food, right? So those of us, why do we gain weight in Ramadan? Because we eat fried foods. We eat foods that we love. We eat tons of desserts. We eat samosas and drink tons of coffee with sugar and eat baklava and kanafa. And then we wonder, oh my God, why did I gain 5 kilos in a month? Supposedly around eating less. Saad, go ahead.
Kind of going back to one of my goals for Ramadan, and this actually goes back to the comment I made earlier. I think one of the things I've noticed coming up to the month is a lot of negative attitudes that I've been holding. I mean, I mentioned the resentment I had against one of my colleagues, meaning a lot of with issues of anger and bitterness for a wide variety of reasons. And do forgive me that I'm being more personal than I usually do, but
Totally
I feel
fine. It's totally fine. That's why we're here.
well, yeah, and the thing is, I do think that one of the reasons why I wanted to attend this session, and Muhammad, I've been following you on Twitter for quite some time, is that I really do believe that for years, I believe that the Sufi tradition, especially as represented in Persian culture, really does speak to those illnesses of the heart, so to speak, and how to address them and how to deal with them. It's also one of the reasons why I actually picked up one of my goals, which I may not get to, but I'll try, is reading a translation of the Masnavi.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I hope I can get to it, amongst other things, because I do feel that.
Look, I don't want to keep plugging the course, but I mean, I offer private tutoring, but the website, again, for only $10 a month, you can get access to it. There's a whole class on the Masnavi that's 10 sections, and it's about an hour and a half each section. There's a couple of people here who took it. And you could just commit to yourself to watching an hour and a half every few days, and you could finish it in a month. But if you'd like, also there are good translations of it. Javad Mujaddidi, for those of you who want to read the Masnavi, is very good, as well as Alan Williams. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, actually, it's interesting because I actually, Muhammad, first I knew about you through a YouTube video you had where you were talking about the several translations. And I remember at that time, I was talking to a friend of mine who teaches Islamic studies in Carleton University, and he suggested those two translations. And then I saw your video and I decided, maybe look at the Alan Williams translation first. Because it's supposed to be more literal, and I just want to use it as an actual study to actually study
that's a good idea.
What it's actually like telling me. So that's one of the goals I really do have. I mean, if somebody asked me what are my two favorite words in Arabic in the Islamic tradition, it's adab and akhlaq, and the two terms that I want to kind of improve upon, because I feel for myself that I'm losing that, and I really need to go back to a state that I can feel comfortable with.
Yeah. There's something I think really unfortunate about our situations for those of us who live in Western countries. I spent about a month in New York recently. And I've been traveling for giving talks and whatnot and teaching. And I realized that everyone's kind of coarse and almost rough around the edges in New York. And I was with a friend, and basically they explained that, look, in this city, everyone's in a hurry, everyone's annoyed, everyone's angry at something. You have to be kind of abrasive. You have to be aggressive sometimes. You can't have Midwestern and Southern politeness here. You have to kind of be, hey, I need something, help me, etc. Like, you got to be like that, right? You can't be, excuse me, how are you? And it's not that you want that, right? So we as Muslims who are, and I guess me temporarily there, we don't love that, but we feel forced to, right? And a lot of times, not just pick on New York, but wherever you are in the Muslim world, there is really a dog eat dog mentality, right? That you have to kind of push and shove, otherwise you'll get pushed over. So unfortunately, this kind of creates an abrasiveness, a coarseness, where we lose that akhlaq, which is something like akhlaq and adab. It's so hard to translate them. It's like etiquettes and manners, kind of, but it's still really not even good at capturing that. And we'll read more from the Golistan and the Bustan. And of course, there are classes that we have on the website that cover the whole text. But the whole essence of those texts is, if you can say anything, is akhlaq and adab. The Masnavi is more about God consciousness, and he talks about adab often. But the whole core of the Golistan and Bustan is about worldly adab, right? And it will read them as we go on. So if you guys are interested, I'll add more anecdotes. But I think it's very sad that our societies here, in a way, they kind of force us to jive the way that modern Western secular people jive, that there's no room for our kind of Eastern niceties. Like, how many of you have had this experience where you go out with people, coworkers, and you say, oh, guys, I'll pay. And they just all let you pay. Like, there's no argument over who will pay, or they will never pay back the second time, right? It's very kind of cold and capitalistic and calculated. So I think it's so important, especially for those of us who don't live in Muslim societies, to try to like grasp onto and hold onto these etiquettes that we have. Because ultimately, if we lose that, that's a big part of who we are, right? Being Muslim is not just about wearing funny hats or whatever, or bending over a few times a day, right? There's all kinds of other people who wear funny hats. So there's all kinds of people who do yoga, right? That doesn't mean anything necessarily if it's not shaped and refined by akhlaq and adab, as you said. It's a very good thing to focus on. I wish you the best with it. I was deaf raised with those Eastern niceties, and only as an adult did I realize how luminous those qualities are. They're very important. They're so important. One of my goals was to set up a Ramadan club at my school, a high school student here, oh, mashallah, which could be an opportunity to take some time out of the busy school day for self-reflection and discussions with a special focus on spirituality and self-purification. A part of Islam the younger generation is particularly so disconnected with. Yeah, that's very unfortunate. We'll get to some of these when we read these texts, inshallah, together over the 4 more classes that we have together. But that's really great. I mean, mashallah, in your age to be concerned about that is, I mean, I definitely, the last thing I cared about was MSA when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. That's great. And also, you guys, there's no age limit here. I mean, hopefully it's PG and fine. So your friends can join in on this as well. To be conscious about everything I do, including thoughts, and to think about the intention of each action and how it may affect those around me. Yeah, these things are so important. Even there's a section in the Masnavi where Rumi criticizes, I think, I don't want to call out a name here because this isn't like a normal class, but the person who's in the weekly Masnavi class with me here, you're the only one, you know who you are. We came across this, I think, or we'll come across it soon, where Rumi derides the idea of entertaining khayal, right? The khayal is kind of like a fancy or an imagination. Vahm as well is kind of a similar idea, that it's dangerous to entertain thoughts and imaginations too much, to give them a life of their own, right? A thought should be like a passing thing. It's like an emotion. You just let it pass through you. But when we cling onto these things, when we attach ourselves to them, then it causes disasters. How? When a man sees a woman in public and thinks, you know, first glance, let's say he's a good Muslim man. Oh, mashallah, what a beautiful person, right? And it passes, he doesn't glance at her again, whatever. But if he starts thinking, oh, wow, she's so beautiful. And then, you know, he keeps thinking, oh, wow, she's so beautiful. Women are so beautiful. All of a sudden, his relationship will fall into trouble, right? Or, for example, many things, right? Like we start thinking about, why don't I have something that someone else has? And then for a second, okay, whatever, it's the qadr of Allah. But what if you keep thinking about it? Then maybe you'll want to steal that thing from that person, right? Maybe you think that, okay, I'm going to do something. And let's be real, there's many careers that are out of our reach, right? When we were kids, if we said, I want to be an NBA player, for example, our parents would say, get out of here. You're too short. There's no Iranians in the NBA. Be realistic. Get a job that will focus on, you know, making some future for yourself, right? I think as sad as it is, maybe that's a good advice. Maybe entertain notions that, you know, I will do something spectacular that's out of reach is not good for us, right? I don't want to be a bummer, but there's many times you'll see in life when you start to entertain notions that actually has a very negative effect. So being in control, conscious control of your thoughts, even as much as we tend to think, oh, thoughts just come and go. No, that's not true. You can train yourself to be in conscious control of your thoughts, to actually block thoughts right as they're starting, right? So when I was in the Sufi order in Iran, unfortunately, I'm not in Iran now, as you guys know, you can tell from my time zone and my background, but we even used to do istighfar from the unintentional thoughts that came into our mind, right? And slowly, at first, when I thought, what do you mean unintentional thoughts? It's not my fault, right? But slowly, it gets to a point where they don't even appear anymore, right? When thoughts of, oh, I wish I covet my brother's wife or car or whatever, or, you know, I want to do something that's actually not realistic, those thoughts slowly start to kind of dissipate. And also the intention of each action, how it'll affect those around me. That's a big thing missing in the modern world, that we think that we're individual actors and that what we do only affects us. And if someone is bothered by it, so be it. That's not their problem. No, that's not true. Every action you have, right? It's like, Maulana says, regard words you speak as an arrow you've flung. Once it's gone, you can't retract it. And same with the actions we do, right? Everything we do has an action, has an impact on the people around us, right? And of course, one of the big problems we have in modern society, like I said, is that people don't think about this. Like, think about people nowadays get married and they don't even care if their parents know who the person they're marrying is, or I think how important that is, that you meet your spouse. Whereas now modern people say, oh yeah, mom and dad, I want to marry this person. I want to be with this person. Or moving to a place, right? We think, okay, I have a slightly better career opportunity. I'll move to a different city, but we don't think, how will our aging parents take that, right? Maybe they were hoping that when they age that I would be around, or how would my siblings take that, you know, rely on me for life advice, etc. Right. So of course, sometimes life pushes us into situations that we can't control. I'm not saying that everyone who moves away is bad. I moved away, right? But we always have to consider how the actions we decide on affect others. Was in the Masnavi that advises you not to dwell on thoughts and not to give a life of its own? Yes, I can't remember exactly when it was in the Masnavi, but if you go in book 1 and look up the word khayal in Persian, you could probably very quickly find this. It's earlier in the book. And I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't dwell on things. Like, for example, if I think, wow, I can have a better career, I'm not just saying, no, push that out of your mind, right? You should consider it. But a thought that's not going to get you anywhere, you shouldn't dwell on it whatsoever, because it will just have a negative impact. Like if a man sees, I'm just speaking from the perspective of a man, right? Women as well. But if you see an attractive member of the opposite gender in public, you shouldn't give it more than a split second thought, because that's going to go down a very bad path, right? When your marriage is going through a rough patch, not an unfixable rough patch, a fixable one, inshallah, you shouldn't think, wow, my friend has such a great marriage, and think, oh, wow, what would be better if I just got divorced and married someone else? Or maybe it was a fixable thing. Or so many issues like this, right? It's just better to kind of, like, again, things, for example, of our past. How many of us have a past that we regret? Or maybe, I don't know, we have friends or family, or even we end up married to someone who has a checkered past, right? Maybe we're divorced and they're divorced. Is it good to think about their divorce, right? If they have kids, for example, is it good to dwell on, oh, you had kids with someone else? No, because that's just going to poison the marriage that you have currently. So really, we should do our best to identify thoughts that are more harmful. And if you want to come at it from a Muslim perspective, you can say it's shaitan speaking to you, and just kind of purge them. Just don't even give them a second's more notice, right? Like a lot of times, for example, people talk to me and they say, I'm somewhere for some circumstance, and where I was 6 months ago, life was much better. I got married and I moved to a city, and, now I don't like the climate that I'm in, and I don't like the weather and the water here, as we say in Persian, abu hava. And I don't like the culture here, where I'm from. There used to be this type of culture, and here the culture is different. And I tell this person, well, that's true. All of that is fair, but you can't retract the decision, right? When you've moved forward in life, you can't go back to the days when things were different. Like they say, you can't cross the same river twice. Even if you were to go back to that place you were, it wouldn't be the same. So although it's good to reminisce sometimes, if you give too much attention to these thoughts, suddenly what should be a good memory about the past is nothing but poison for your present, right? It's like when people who think, I guess not so much for the Muslims, but people who are married, they say, oh, I think about, or some Muslims, for example, who had a secular past, they say, I think about excuse me for speaking frank, this is a small circle, right? I think about the girlfriends that I used to have before I got married. And I would tell that person, quit that instant. Don't give it a second thought. Purge the thought from your mind, because all that's going to do is poison the current relationship you have with this Muslim sister that you've married. So anyway, not to get too preachy with you guys. Anyway, so these are just some of the lessons that you guys will get in the Masnavi class, which is one of the classes that we have on Persian poetics. So here, I can show you guys really quick. If you guys, I know that you guys all created the account to get to the Zoom link. So if you go to the website and you go to the browse full catalog section, let's see, this is a Hafiz class I just finished. And these are the talks that I give. You guys just missed it. These are the talks that I give that I do not post on the internet because I don't want them plagiarized. That's a big problem. Even in the Muslim speaker circuit, by the way, talk plagiarism is a big problem. And then also we have the commentaries on the Masnavi circle, where we're just reading the text from start to finish. But I'm trying to find the Masnavi class for you all. There we go. Pearls of the Masnavi English. So those of you who want to join, it's 14.5 hours of video content of us reading through all these topics elucidated in the Masnavi. All right, and it is $99 if you want to buy it once, but you can just get it for $9.99 a month this month. All right, any other questions, comments? I promise I'll try to be less preachy than this last one. All right, so anyone else want to add any practices that you benefited from? It could be related to spiritual, secular, suhoor things. No, you don't need a background in Persian to take any of the courses. They're all designed for people who have no background whatsoever. Every course has a 1 introductory hour-and-a-half lesson where I give you an introduction as if you had never even heard the name Rumi before. There is Persian in the course. There's a Persian section. So there's 2 sections, English and Persian, but they're just mirrors of each other. So if you don't know Persian, it's fine. No, so it's geared towards people who know English primarily. Acting on what I know, I don't know Persian, but one of the most famous lines of Persian poetry in the subcontinent is what I really want to act on. Koshtegan, I'm sorry, I have to like really zoom in because the Persian font is so badly rendered, unfortunately. Koshtegan khanjar taslim ra har zaman az ghaib jan digar ast. Wow, that's so beautiful. So something like the people who are killed by the dagger of submission, every moment from the unseen, they get another life. Wow, that's so beautiful. Who is that by? Do you happen to know who that's by? Koshtegan khanjar taslim ra har zaman az ghaib jan digar ast. Wow, that is phenomenal. I love that. I wish if it's not a full poem, I still love it. But if that is a full poem, I really want to read the full poem. Let me copy and paste that. That's so beautiful. Wow. I think I might have found it on an Iranian website. Although I don't know. I think, is it Khaja Bakhtiyar? Is he one of the Murids of Moinuddin Chishti? Because it says, oh, maybe it's just quoted here. پشتگان خنجر تسلیم را هر زمان از غیب جان دیگر است. Let's see, 5. Let's see if it's credited. That's great. I love that. It's worthy of being posted. Okay, does it not? Where's 5? این شعر سروده شیخ احمد جام است. Beautiful, Ahmed Jami. I have his divan actually. I'll go find that. That's so great. کشتگان خنجر تسلیم را. Let's go find it. And actually, maybe we can show you guys some of the functions of the website, because I'm pretty sure I uploaded the divan of Ahmed Jam into the book PDFs. Wow, that's beautiful. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? It doesn't have to be necessarily directly answering any of the particular questions or things that I asked. New Yorker here, and it's almost time for iftar. All right, it was great to have you. I'll also be signing off shortly, especially if there's no other comments and questions. I don't want to keep you guys here just listening to me. It is also nearly iftar time here, but I'm trying to quickly find. Oh, I think maybe there's just too many. That's odd here. I guess I'll go through the admin section. I'll show you guys the back from the back end. I'll go pull out. So I'll show you where we have a bunch of Persian poetry PDFs in the website that you guys will get access to. Let's see. Books, Persian poetry, divans, compilations. Okay, it should be in this one. So the website's still working in progress. I'm still uploading out all the content that I've. Okay, great. There we go. So here, yeah, so you guys can see the back end. Sheikh Ahmed Jam. Let's see. Should be able to find this. There we go. Okay, I really want to find this poem. So it would be Digar Ast. So the poem would end in Ast. Although it seems like it will take a while to find this. I really want to add this to a class or something. Thank you so much. Any other comments, questions? I won't make you guys sit through me finding this. I'll find this and I'll send you guys the full poem, inshallah. And hopefully, I think I'll translate it if the whole thing is as good as that line. Questions, comments, anything? All right, so I'll let you guys get to your iftar. Those of you who are living in this part of the world, and those of you, it's 3 a.m. Thank you for coming. Good night. I hope you have a good suhoor. So this will be a weekly meeting. So just next week at the same exact time this one started, you can join with the same Zoom link. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys, inshallah. All right. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, San. Khoda Hafiz, everyone. Allah Hafiz. Ma salama. Ciao. Goodbye.